Welcome to MMA Below the Surface, where we dig deeper on upcoming UFC cards and combat sports events. I'm your host, Maveen Ahluwalia, and today we're breaking down UFC 272's main event, Jorge Masvidal versus Colby Covington. I am super excited for this fight, super pumped. I think it's going to be one of the biggest fights of the year and definitely going to be the biggest grudge match of the year. Two former best friends and close training partners at American Top Team. Jorge still trains at American Top Team. Colby has since left due to feuds with him and other fighters, and I believe coaches as well. But I think it just makes for a great story leading up to this, and I think it's going to be fireworks. Now, I know a lot of people were really bummed out that this was no longer going to be on The Ultimate Fighter. And I know it would have been a great kind of build up to the fight, but honestly, I'm just happy we get to avoid any more unnecessary delays. And I think the build up to the fight's already going to be great with the media that's in place. And I think with the press conferences, nothing's going to feel like we got robbed of anything. So I'm just excited we only have to wait until March 5th for this. Now let's get into it. So for the odds makers, they have placed Colby at a minus 300 and Jorge at around a plus 250. And I think the odds makers and pretty much everyone else thinks Colby's going to dominate this fight. And honestly, if I'm a betting man, I'm probably taking Colby by decision over 5 rounds. I think he gets it done, but the MMA fan in me really wants Jorge to win this by some spectacular KO. And I'm going to do my best not to be biased in this breakdown, but I know I'll tell you right off the bat, the fan in me wants Jorge to win. But now let's get into what needs to happen in order for each of these individuals to take the W on this. So for Colby Covington, what does it look like when Colby Covington is winning a fight? I think besides the few Kamaru fights, it's pretty much been a very straightforward game plan, which is to overwhelm his opponents with pressure and volume, back them up against that black line, put their backs on the fence, and really go between the striking and mixing in the takedowns, landing the takedowns, controlling. One thing to note about Colby's game, he's very heavy on control. When he gets you to the ground or gets you against the fence in a vulnerable position, he's not very often striking, more really focused on locking you down in that position. Guy's got incredible cardio. I mean, besides the champ, I don't think anybody else has better cardio than him in the division. Can go 5 rounds nonstop, never slow down, which is absolutely insane. Some of his other strengths, I mean, granite chin. You've seen him eat shots that have put other people away, especially from the current champ. I know the champ dropped him a couple times, but I mean, he's finishing everyone else. And Colby's just getting back and actually winning rounds after that. And I don't think anybody else before that has ever really rocked him. Maybe caught him with good shots, but I've never really seen him doing the chicken dance or anything like that. Another one of his strengths, great chain wrestling. One thing you see about Colby against the fence, he'll go from a double to a single to a high crotch and keep mixing it up between everything. As soon as you turn, he'll try to take your back, put a hook in, and really mixes up the wrestling offense very, very well. And I think that's going to be a big factor for him in this fight. When you look at where Jorge has struggled in the past, it's when opponents have been able to really keep him on the back foot, keep him pressed against the fence, and mix up the striking and grappling. And I think you've seen Jorge, I think one of the reasons the odds makers have it this way is because you've seen Jorge be able to kind of get controlled by strong grapplers, and especially people who can put a consistent pace on him and mix in the wrestling. I think if it was just striking, Jorge has no cardio issues whatsoever. But I think we've seen fairly consistently that as you start to really mix in the striking with the grappling, Jorge's pop does start to slow down as the fight goes on. I think you saw that a little bit in the Benson Henderson fight. Damian Maia was just able to control him the entire fight. Kamaru in their first fight, granted that was on short notice, but still just kept him really pressed up against the fence, and at certain points, Jorge was willing to just accept those positions. So I think for Colby to win this fight, it's going to look very similar to that. I know in his last fight against Kamaru, he was a little bit more patient with the striking and a little bit more technical, and I think you're going to see a little bit more of that. I don't think you're going to see the Colby that we saw in the Dos Anjos fight where he's running at him with flying knees and these looping hooks. I think he respects Jorge's striking a little bit more than that, but I do think we're going to see a slightly higher pace and a lot more forward pressure, where he was willing to just meet Kamaru in the octagon and kind of have this kickboxing fight with him. He's not going to play that game with Jorge. I think that's where he's giving Jorge the most opportunities to win. I think everything about Colby's striking is going to be about pressing Jorge back to the fence, getting him behind that black line, and controlling him against the fence, chain wrestling him. I don't think he's going to be able to take Jorge down as often as people think. I think people think he's just going to be mauling Colby. Colby's just going to be mauling Jorge on the ground. I think Jorge's stand-up, his takedown defense, is something that's greatly improved over his fights. And you've seen even the champion. I know the champion did get him down, but there were a lot of times where his takedown defense was really on point in that fight. And Jorge has a strong scrambling ability as well. So I don't think it's going to be easy, and I think that's definitely why it's going to go to decision here. But Colby being able to control him against the fence just might be enough for him to win this fight just like that. And I think one thing he's going to look for in this is to take Jorge's back through the scrambles against the fence and really look to just ride him from there and maybe put a hook in and try to take his back, because that's something Demian Maia was able to do quite handedly. Granted, Demian Maia is one of the most high-level BJJ practitioners the UFC has ever seen, and his specialty is attacking from the back, so take that with a grain of salt, but I think it's something Colby is going to look for in this. Now, what are some of the weaknesses Colby has shown in his fights? Not a ton, but I think if you're really picking out things, it's one, he stays in the pocket a little too long sometimes. You see him, because he's such a volume striker and he doesn't have that full one punch just knockout power, he really tries to chip away at guys and put combinations together. Sometimes you see him just going off on these 4 to 6 punch combinations and just not slipping his head, just staying in the pocket, just firing. And I think that got him in trouble against Kamaru a couple of times, and I think it's something that Jorge can take advantage of. When you look at some of Jorge's strengths, the guy has incredible boxing, incredible kicks, great head movement. I know for a long time people were talking about, Max Holloway, best boxer in the UFC. They were putting Poirier's name, Cater's name, Connor's name. All these names were getting thrown around, and I thought it was pretty shocking that people weren't putting some respect on Jorge's name for that, because I think for a long time he was showing the best boxing in the UFC for a long time. And I think his head movement is incredible, and that's something that he can take advantage of against Colby. One other thing that I did think Colby has shown just a slight weakness into him, for him, and I think it's a weakness for everyone, but the body shots and Kamaru going to the body in that fight, I think has made a big difference both times. And I think if Jorge can take advantage of that and consistently go to the body throughout the fight, I think he'll have a much higher chance of winning. Now, in terms of Jorge's strengths, I know I touched on a couple of them, but one thing I want to highlight here, Jorge is a really great kickboxer, and especially in this later stage of his career, he's shown very explosive striking. I think he's got amazing kicks, and you saw in the first Kamaru fight, he threw a lot of body kicks, and in the second fight, as long as it did go, and I know a lot of people just write off Jorge in that fight, but when you go back, there are some things that Jorge did better. In the limited amount of time that the fight did go on, there were certain adjustments that he made, and one of them was kicking to the leg kicks. He primarily didn't go as much to the body. In the first fight, you saw him just blasting body kicks. This one, a lot more leg kicks, was a lot more patient, pairing the jab, chopping at the leg. And I think that's something we're going to see him implement in this fight. I think leg kicks are something Colby's susceptible to. Colby has a primarily pretty long stance, likes to blast kicks as well, but stands pretty long and hasn't really checked kicks that well. He relies more on his forward pressure to just not even give that option there. But I think if Jorge can keep the fight in the center, that's somewhere he's going to have a lot of success, chopping at that leg, going to the body. He's really going to need to put in that consistent work in the early rounds in order to be able to withstand Colby's volume going into the 4th and 5th, because Colby's not going to slow down until you really put some damaging body work onto him. I know Teddy Atlas calls it putting water in the basement, and so that's something Jorge's really going to have to do in this fight. What else are some of Jorge's strengths? I think one thing that's really underrated, I know Jorge definitely gets controlled against the fence sometimes in fights, but in the open space, his clinching is actually really phenomenal. Going back and watching some of this fight, he's got great elbows and great knees in the clinch. So I think for Jorge, this whole fight is about keeping it in the center of the octagon. The more he can keep it there, the higher his chances of winning the fight. And I think that's where he has to put his whole game plan around, using really great footwork, circling off a lot, because Colby's gonna throw a lot of attacks at him that are gonna make him want to back up. And Jorge's gonna really have to use that lateral movement to circle out and retake the center. And that's something that he's gonna have to be ready to do consistently over 5 rounds. One thing to note is he is coming off 2 training camps against the champ Kamaru Usman. And I think for both of those, 1 full training camp, 1 short camp, but even prior to that, he was planning on fighting Kamaru, and he was bringing in a lot of great wrestlers to get prepared. So Jorge's had his wrestling shoes on now for a while. And I think consistently fighting wrestlers, he's going to know what Colby likes to do. He's going to know some of the things Colby likes to look for, and vice versa. But I think Jorge is going into this with a little better shot, just with the high-level wrestling that he's going to been training. And if you don't know anything about American Top Team, they've been making partnerships with D1 college wrestlers and bringing them in and almost starting like a exit program for them when they exit university. So, I mean, he's getting the best wrestlers he possibly can get to train with to prepare for this. So, you know he's going to be as prepared as possible to wrestle for 25 minutes. And I think that's something he well knows he's going to do. I think he knows Colby's going to come at him and really just try to control him there. Now, in terms of my picks, like I mentioned, still going with Colby on this by decision. But if Jorge can keep it in the center, chop the legs, go to the body, and be a little bit more measured with his striking, he's gonna have to avoid those same switch stance blitzing combinations that he's landed on and put guys out like Darren Till with. He has to avoid that in this fight, because that's gonna get him in trouble here. They're gonna get him overextended. Colby's gonna dip under, and it's gonna be an easy takedown for him. So he really has to show measured, consistent striking, going to the body, going to the legs, like I mentioned. And I think if he can do that, he's got a good shot of winning this. But if you see Jorge consistently getting pushed against the fence and his feet behind that black line, it's going to be Colby all night long. Anyways, that's my breakdown for the main event of UFC 272. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and enjoy the fights.